Welcome to our class. Do you know what class this is? Has anyone informed you what you're in for? What are you expecting, Madison?
Public speaking.
Public speaking, yes. This is Introduction to Public Speaking. So, if you need to escape now, figure out some way to get out of it. But I am curious, how many of you kind of like public speaking? Like, if you had a chance to stand up in front of a few dozen or a few hundred or a few thousand people, how many of you would kind of, yes, that'll be cool? Anybody? Maybe, yeah, a couple. Good. I might be in that category. How many of you would rather do any other awful, horrible thing that you could think of than have to stand in front of 100 people and talk for an hour? Well, you are the perfect victim. I mean, students for this class, because we are going to move, I believe, successfully, almost all of you who are in that reluctant zone into the getting excited zone. But there's a path from here to there. So we have 12 classes to work through. And our first class today is going to be fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Some of you may be familiar with the initial ideas that I'm presenting, but I promise we will quickly move past that. So if you are familiar, don't say, I already know that. Say, okay, we'll practice that, and then we're going to move on. Obviously, there are many different applications for public speaking in the world today. Can you think of any? Who have you seen or observed? What kind of person or individual that you know does public speaking regularly? Yeah.
You.
That's true. I do. Who else, though, in practical life? Who do you see having to do public speaking? Nathan?
Fundraisers.
Fundraisers, yes, excellent. Who else?
Pastors.
Pastors, definitely.
The president.
The president usually does have to do stuff like that. And you might even just expand that to all people running for office or politicians. Yep.
Salesman.
Salesman, yeah, that's true.
Anyone involved in news.
Anyone involved in news. Interesting, I didn't think of that. Any others? You may not have much experience in the world of business or companies, but you will probably discover that in many cases, just in the course of a job, you have a need, or someone has a need, to prepare a presentation and then give that to any number of people, small or large. And so I think pretty much everyone agrees that the benefits of acquiring comfortability with public speaking can last your whole life. Whatever you might come to, whether you end up teaching or preaching or selling or hopefully running for office someday, right, Caleb? You never know. Or maybe you just end up being a small influencer in a small network and being comfortable to share ideas in groups of people. There is something a little bit unnerving about standing up in front of a whole lot of people who are doing absolutely nothing but just waiting for you to say something interesting. The weight on you is strong. So we're going to start off with the idea of how to speak from notes. How to speak from notes, and then we're going to gradually build our ability to do that, while at the same time, we're also going to be polishing presentation skills, and then also along with that, on how to write good speeches. Some of you may be familiar with this idea. If you'd like to pull out a sheet of paper, take some notes, this give you a little bit of context for what we're doing. Okay, rhetoric. How many of you are familiar with this term, rhetoric? Yeah, could you define it? Could anyone say what that means? Noah, give it a shot.
Rhetoric would be the art of speaking, effectively verbally conveying ideas or messages.
Okay, good. Anyone want to add to that? probably a lot of people might add in persuasiveness, right? So the art of persuasive speaking, or in general, persuasive communication, which is, of course, what you're trying to do if you're a politician or a salesperson or a preacher or a mom. They work hard on persuasion. You've probably noticed. So what is it, though, in kind of a historical sense? It was one of the 7 liberal arts. Liberal meaning the arts which free people would study to preserve their intellectual, spiritual, physical freedom. And there were 7, you've probably heard of some of them. Grammar, who studied grammar? Excellent. Logic, anyone ever had a course with a logic on the cover? So. And then rhetoric, those are the 3, or the meeting of 3 ways. Those are the language or qualitative liberal arts. And then there's also the quantitative or mathematical arts. And that would be arithmetic. Who studied arithmetic? Glad to hear it. Geometry. Very nice. Music. Astronomy. A few. Okay, so those of you who've studied any of those have studied the liberal arts. Now, rhetoric is the one that we focus on here. And there's a thing called the 5 canons of rhetoric. Please note, this does not mean big gun. The word big gun is spelled with 3 N's, C-A-N-N-O-N. This is the 2N canon, which doesn't mean big gun, it means collection of things or division of something. Perhaps you've heard the term the canon of Western civilization, meaning the collection of great books produced in the West over thousands of years. So if you were a student of rhetoric a long time ago, as well as today, I guess, you would study 5 things in order to become skilled. 3 of those things we teach in writing classes pretty consistently because those are all the problems that you have. Invention is the problem of what to say. Arrangement is how to order your ideas, and elocution is how to say what you want to say. And these are the steps that you would go through in the process of writing a paper or an essay or a speech or something. In this class, we're not going to worry about that so much because we teach that in general in other writing classes. In this class, there's 2 more which are kind of given short shrift. One is memory, and the other is delivery. So memory and delivery. Now, memory kind of divides into 2 areas of study, of practice, of skills development. One of those is the technique. The technique of actually memorizing. How many of you find it pretty easy to memorize things? How many of you find it harder than you wish? So, like most things that are harder than you wish, fixing a car, making a souffle, building a complex model, climbing Mount Everest. All of those things, in fact, pretty much anything you can think of, there is technique. In other words, tricks you can learn to make it easier. So that's one thing we are going to study, is a few techniques to help you memorize things. Then there's the other aspect, which would be furnishing the mind. And that would be when you practice your memory technique on something that someone else wrote that is good or beautiful or eloquent or persuasive or powerful. What would be an advantage of memorizing something that someone else wrote? Any thoughts? Yes, Levi.
So you can quote it for like comedic purposes, perhaps?
Excellent. If you've memorized something that someone said, you could extract a quote from that and use it. Did you ever notice that if you quote somebody who's smarter than you, it makes you look smarter? I try that all the time. But it gives you credibility, so that's a good one. Why else might we consider memorizing something that someone else wrote as valuable? Yeah,
Maybe
Caleb.
to produce the same effect that it had on you to other people.
Sure. If you heard something and it was powerful and well done and motivated you, and you could replicate that to some degree, capture the feeling or some of the techniques, then you could be more effective. Good. So you improve your effectiveness by memorizing something that someone else does. So when you memorize something that is good and beautiful, you are furnishing your mind with the vocabulary, but not just the vocabulary, with the grammatical patterns, but not just that, also with the schemes and tropes, the beautiful things that you can do in language that brings it to life, and, as you said, Nevaeh, the very ideas from which it's comprised. So throughout pretty much all of history, the way people have studied how to be effective communicators has included, not limited to, but included practicing excerpts or entire famous speeches or poetry or scripture or things that someone else wrote. So those are the two aspects of memory. And we're gonna address both of these. So delivery, that would be the actual technique of standing in front of people and talking to them. What would that include? Can you think of a few things?
Presentation,
Okay, and what might that include?
like just the actual speaking.
Okay, so your voice. How do you use your voice? Have you ever heard people who speak in kind of a monotone and it's all really the same, and then after a while you just kind of aren't interested so much anymore because it's just all blending together, and you think, why is this person kind of just speaking in a monotone, and you wish that there'd be something to kind of wake you up, but there isn't, so you just go to sleep. So voice, modulation, and there's all sorts of aspects of that. There's volume, there's pacing, there's inflection. Did you know you could say 3 words in 3 different ways and have 3 different meanings? For example, Amy, you did that, or you did that, or you did that. Isn't that fascinating about the way language is? That there's words, and yet on top of just the words, which could be written down, there's that essential element of humanity that adds depth to everything we say. So voice, what else would be important? Yes?
Posture.
Posture, yes. If someone's very stiff, if someone's very... There's a balance. There's always a balance. What else? Voice, posture. Caleb.
Eye contact.
Oh, yes. It's funny, if you said to anyone, do you like being looked at? Most everyone would say no. But what happens when you're in an audience and the speaker looks at you every now and then? You feel like, okay, there's a connection. He's talking to me. She wants me to hear what she's saying, right? Whereas if you're in a room and the speaker is only looking at one person for the entire time, how do you feel? Lonely, left out. So, eye contact. Anything else? What else might you consider helpful when people are speaking?
how they use their hands and kind of their surroundings.
Sure, kind of an extension off posture, but there's gestures. Yeah, so we might put that in there. Gestures. I've used a few additional techniques in this last few minutes talking to you. Have you noticed anything effective that I did? Caleb?
Maybe emotion?
Ah, and how did I convey emotion?
Your face.
Levi?
A way to write that might be like expressions.
Uh-huh, sure. Yeah, I'll even leave in facial expression because that really is a big thing. And it can make a point sometimes even more effectively than you could instead of the words. And if you have the words and expressions together, then you're more powerful. There are other things that we can talk about later as we go, but that's the basic plan. So we're going to work on these two aspects of rhetoric: memory and delivery. Now, the first thing we'd like to do is learn how to speak from notes. Because in the beginning, when you do public speaking, the odds are very good that you will want to be speaking from notes. Now, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I have, because I've been to lots of conferences and things. But have you ever been in a place where someone was standing up, at the lectern with a microphone, reading their paper to you? How do you feel?
Disengaged, disinterested.
Disengaged, disinterested. And of course, if they're reading, where are their eyes?
On the paper.
On the paper. I mean, this would be bad. This would be worse. But either way, it's not good. And so you don't ever want really to get in that situation of writing a speech and then just reading it, because it doesn't work. In fact, I remember one talk, and I was so looking forward to hearing this man. I'd known about him for years. I was super excited. And I sat there right toward the front, and he just started reading his paper. And I was so disappointed because after about 10 minutes, I was bored to death. And then he stopped and said, "Now, let me tell you." And then he told this fascinating story for a few minutes. And he said, "Oh, I'm off script." And then he went back to reading. And I remember thinking, no, don't do it. Just stay off script. Tell interesting stories. I could read your blasted paper, but I want to hear your spirit come through, right? So there's that element as well. So, but you don't want to get stuck not knowing what to say next. That is a horrible feeling when you're in the middle of talking and then you remember what you were trying to say. Well, that's bad for everybody too, right? So polish and smooth. So let me give you a little source text here. First, I'll read it, and you can just follow along. Here we go. Public speaking. About 10% of people polled love public speaking, looking forward to being in front of an audience. Another 10% are intensely afraid, suffering from a condition labeled glossophobia. This can cause debilitating nausea, panic attacks, and extreme anxiety. However, most are somewhere in the middle, experiencing varying degrees of unease about public speaking, from stomach butterflies to sleeplessness. The good news is that this anxiousness is caused by adrenaline. With a bit of training, the added energy that adrenaline provides can be turned to an advantage. With careful preparation and practice, each of your presentations will likely be better than the last. Your confidence will gradually increase and your nervousness will decrease. As with anything, the more you do it, the easier it gets. Additionally, you will be more likely to overcome public speaking fears, large or small, at a younger age. So don't wait. Stand up and speak out. This is my pathetic attempt to convince you that this should be good. All right, take out a fresh piece of paper. Now, on your fresh piece of paper, go ahead and up at the top, we'll put the title, Public Speaking. And in making a keyword outline, which is what we're going to do, we read each sentence again now, and then we choose from each sentence a maximum of 3 keywords that would help us remember the basic idea of the sentence. Now, in addition to the 3 words, we generally allow for symbols, numbers, and abbreviations. So if you see a number or a symbol, that's kind of a freebie. But let's look at this next sentence again and see if we can identify which would be some good key words to remember. About 10% of people polled love public speaking, looking forward to being in front of an audience. All right, keyword suggestions? What do you like? Yes, Josiah.
10%.
Okay, now that's going to be a freebie because
It's a
The number.
number.
10 is a number and
Percentage.
percent is a symbol. So that's great. Okay, so we'll have that. Let's just run some numbers down. We start with a Roman numeral to indicate paragraph. In this case, we only have 1 paragraph, so we're only going to have 1 Roman numeral. But then we'll put numbers for the sentences as they come below. All right, so we got 10%. Okay, that was free. So we still get 3 words. Nathan.
Polled.
Polled. All right, let's go with that. 10% polled. What about these 10%? Emily?
They love speaking.
Okay, they love speaking. Good enough? Okay, so let's do that. 10% of those polled love public speaking. We could actually probably just put PS for public speaking. That makes it even easier, doesn't it? I like to save myself the trouble. All right, good. So that should remind us then of the basic idea. Okay, next. Another 10% are intensely afraid, suffering from a condition labeled glossophobia. All right, keywords there. Jack, what do you think?
Another 10%.
Okay, another 10%. Yes, Levi.
Intensely afraid.
Okay. Intensely afraid. And you could have one more word. I'm guessing you will choose.
Glossophobia.
Did you ever hear that word before today?
I actually hadn't, no.
Yeah, isn't it cool? I love learning new words. Glossophobia. It's from the Greek, and glossa means what? Guess.
Speak.
Speak, and phobia means?
Fear.
Fear. There you go. So, next sentence. This, what's this referring to?
Glossophobia.
Glossophobia. Can cause debilitating nausea, panic attacks, and extreme anxiety. Keywords? Nathan, what do you like?
This, but we'd want to substitute glossophobia.
Yeah, or you could just put a little arrow like that. And then you know, okay, the next line's talking about that. So that's easy. So you don't need this, but you get 3 words. What do you like? Anybody? Yeah, Levi.
Nausea.
Nausea? Amy?
Trying to figure out how to put panic attack in one word.
Well, it's either panic or attack.
Panic.
So we got nausea, panic, and one more. Anna, what do you like?
Anxiety.
Anxiety? Okay. Nausea, panic, anxiety. Sounds delightful, doesn't it? However, most are somewhere in the middle, experiencing varying degrees of unease about public speaking, from stomach butterflies to sleeplessness. All right, keywords. Nevaeh, what do you like?
Middle.
Middle, okay. You can always underline the keywords if you like, so you can remember. Okay, what else about that? Most of us are in the middle. Madison, what would you go with?
Sleeplessness.
Sleeplessness. And I guess if you're going to choose sleeplessness, you also need to go with
Unease.
unease. Okay. So most of us are in the middle, experiencing unease. Now, I said symbols were free. And I'm not sure if this is a legal symbol or not, but it would be very handy. Only I'm a pretty bad artist. So I'm expecting you'll do better, but see if you can guess what I'm drawing here.
Butterfly.
Yes, thank you, Levi. It would have been horribly embarrassing if nobody figured out that I was trying to draw. You know, if you'd said like a number 8 with a stake through its heart, I would have been impressed with your ingenuity, but I would have been sad. Anyway, butterfly. And what was the other problem?
Sleepless.
Sleeplessness. It's funny how that expression came into being, butterflies in your stomach. Like, so few people actually eat butterflies. All right, next sentence. The good news is that this anxiousness is caused by adrenaline. Nathan, what do you like?
Anxiousness.
Anxiousness. Any more?
Caused.
Caused? Adrenaline. This is probably one of those cases where you don't even need 3 words. You'll remember the relationship, right? So you can just put adrenaline. All right, moving on. With a bit of training, the added energy that adrenaline provides can be turned to an advantage. Keywords, Emily, what do you like?
Training, adrenaline, and advantage.
Training, adrenaline. You've done this before, haven't you? All right. This adrenaline can be used to your advantage. All right, let's move on. With careful preparation and practice, each of your presentations will likely be better than the last, and your confidence will gradually increase, and your nervousness will decrease. Now I know that's kind of a long sentence, but see if you can still do it in 3 words. Use your adrenaline, slow time down, think carefully. What do you like, Josiah?
Preparation.
Okay, we'll go with preparation. And Levi?
Confidence with like an arrow pointing up,
Excellent.
and nervousness with an arrow pointing down.
Perfect. All right. Great. Okay, so with preparation, confidence up, nervousness down. Perfect. Any of you know who Steve Jobs was?
Yeah, he was the founder of Apple, wasn't he?
He was one of the founders of Apple and the CEO for many years. He would spend 2 days just getting ready for a presentation. 2 whole days. Of course, he had fancy PowerPoints and all that stuff, but preparation was the key. All right, finishing up here. Oh, we got 2 more to go. As with anything, the more you do it, the easier it gets. I don't think you even need 3 words here. You could go with probably just 2. Nevaeh?
Could do more, and easier.
All right, so more equals easier. Okay. Additionally, you will become more likely to overcome public speaking fears, large or small, at a younger age? Keywords?
You overcome your fears when you're young.
When you're young. There you go. Okay, so overcome fears when you're young. And then I've got two tiny little sentences at the end. They're not terribly important. So don't wait. Last one. Stand up and speak out. We just want it to be artistic. Okay. All right. So those are kind of just cute little endings. They don't have a whole lot of meaning you would need to be sure to convey. So that is the way you would make a keyword outline on something of approximately this length if you are planning to use every sentence. Now, we test the keyword outline by trying to tell it back, right? And so the way we would do this is to say, okay, we wrote down 10% polled love PS. Why? What was the idea that went with that? Kind of say it in your mind. Did you hear it? What did you say to yourself, Madison?
10% of the people polled like public speaking.
Perfect. So was that exactly like the original? No. Was it a complete sentence? Yes. That's all we need. So you're safe. Good. Now, rather than doing this all together, I want you to have a chance to try this on your own. So we'll let you practice with the partner that's at your table. Okay, excellent. So was everyone able to talk it through both ways? Did anyone discover that they looked at the keywords and then looked up and kind of forgot what the keywords are? That can happen, right? But what I have experienced is the more you practice, the less likely you're going to be to forget those keywords. And some people have much more of a visual memory and can actually see the keywords that were on the page in their mind. How many of you fall into that category? A couple of you? I don't. I don't remember visual things nearly as easily as I remember auditory things. So in my case, rather than trying to see the keywords, I would try to hear myself say them as I said them to myself when I wrote them down. I'm much more likely to hear that way. But you analyze yourself. Do you do better by recalling visual information and kind of reading it, which I think would be very cool if I had that, but I don't? Or is it better if you hear it once or twice and then that locks it in better? So that was pretty easy content. There's nothing particularly unusual or unfamiliar about this, right? As things become less familiar, the whole process becomes a little bit harder. Would you agree? So I have another source text here, which I believe will be significantly more of a challenge for you. Fortunately, it is a very, very, very old story, and the guy who translated Plato is also very, very old. In fact, I guess he's probably dead since his book was published in 1892. So I'm kind of in a safe zone using this, what we call the public domain. If I were to use something that someone else wrote that wasn't old enough to be in the public domain, I would have to be more careful about using it and crediting or even getting permission. So this is the famous story I would like to read to you, and then I'm going to give you some homework to make the keyword outline from this and practice telling it back to some people. So that'll be homework, just so you know where we're going with this. All right, here we go. Socrates' story of Thoth and the gift of writing, from the Phaedrus, which is one of the dialogues, right? In the Egyptian city of Naucratis, there was a famous old god whose name was Thoth. He was the inventor of many arts, such as calculation and geometry and astronomy and drafts and dice. But his greatest discovery was the use of letters. So this is like one of those, how did something come to exist? The ancient people, they didn't necessarily know, so they make up a story. Well, there was this god who lived over there, and he was so smart, he invented mathematics and also checkers, which is drafts, D-R-A-U-G-H-T-S. You might pronounce it draughts, but the word in English pronounced drafts. And in American, we might say drafts, and actually just means the game of checkers. So if you're ever over there somewhere in the United Kingdom and you want to approach a stranger and play checkers, be sure you challenge him to a game of drafts. Going on. His greatest discovery was the use of letters. In those days, Thamus was the king of the whole country of Egypt. Thoth came to him and showed him his inventions, desiring that the other Egyptians might be allowed to benefit from them. Thamus listened and inquired about their various uses, approving or disapproving them. When it came to letters, Thoth claimed that writing would make the Egyptians wiser and give them better memories. Thamus replied, "O most ingenious Thoth, the inventor of an art is not always the best judge of the utility of one's own inventions. This discovery of yours will create forgetfulness in the learners' souls because they will not use their memories. Instead, they will trust to the external written characters and not remember of themselves. This will be an aid not to memory, but to reminiscence. Your disciples will be hearers of many things, but will have learned nothing. They will appear to be omniscient, but will generally know nothing. They will be tiresome company, having the show of wisdom without reality." What do you think? What's his argument? This King Thamus. Kind of summarize for me. What's he basically responding to Thoth? Levi.
If people can just write down stuff, they won't bother like memorizing it. They'll just write it down and then.
And so two things happen. They don't exercise their memory, and that other part's kind of interesting. He says they'll be hearers of many things, but learning nothing. They'll appear to know, but not. And then I love that last one. They will be tiresome company, having the appearance of wisdom, the show of wisdom without reality. So what happens? He's predicting that humans will become dependent on writing, and that technology will gradually decrease the skill which it replaces. If there were no writing, what would everyone have to do?
Have to memorize everything they wanted to remember.
Yes, you'd have to memorize everything you want to remember. So this is a very famous story, and it's often used as an illustration of the problem of technology. People think of technology, what do you think of? iPhones, internet, facial recognition software, home security systems that you can turn on and off with your phone. You think of all that stuff. That's new for now, but there's always been technology, right? The steam engine was technology. Writing itself was technology. So this is kind of the seminal, meaning story seed of the idea that technology will atrophy or cause a decline in the human faculty it possesses. So if someone gives you a calculator at 7 years old and lets you do every math problem that you ever have to do when you're a kid with a calculator, what will happen? Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do it without the calculator.
You wouldn't be able to do it without the calculator. That's a huge problem. Although some people think, no, there'll always be calculators, so that's not. But even more significantly, you would not develop any speed at doing addition or subtraction or multiplication or division. Can you imagine how horrible it would be if you need to figure out what 6 times 7 is and you have to count it out? Or, 6 times 7, better check that one. It would be so handicapping to your ability to think mathematically. How many of you do algebra or something higher right now? Well, you know in algebra, if you see a 42 in the denominator, bam, you're looking for 6s and 7s all over the place, right? So you got to be able to think. So what happens when people say, oh, you don't have to memorize dates or names because you can just ask your phone? Well, what happens? If you don't know any names or dates at all, you don't even know what to ask your phone, right? So it's always been the case. Technology will atrophy or it will inhibit the development of the skill which it replaces. So this story is often chosen for that. All right, so your first assignment is to make a keyword outline of this article. Now, this article is 2 paragraphs, so when you do it, you're going to want to use a second Roman numeral for the second paragraph. So I don't know how many sentences are there, but your outline will look something like that, however many you need, and then you're going to put Egyptian, what's that city? Naucratis was the god Thoth. And then you just keep going, just like we did with this other article on public speaking. Then, once you've made the keyword outline, practice first with yourself. Then once you've practiced with yourself, then go find someone and try to tell them from your keyword outline this story without looking at the original, just using the keywords. All right? The basic rule, the thing you're trying to practice here, is don't talk while your eyes are on the paper. You want to be sure that when you're talking, your eyes are up, looking at someone. That's the skill we're trying to hone here. All right? Any question about that? I will review one more time after when we're ready to go. All right. Now, the second thing we're going to do, I think would be maybe a little bit more fun for some of you, maybe a little more frustrating for others. I'm going to assign you to memorize a poem. So I chose 4 poems. They are all approximately the same length, 100 words plus or minus a couple dozen. So there's 2 on the front, 2 on the back. And what I would like you to do is choose one of these poems. And if, by some strange chance, you have already memorized one of these poems, I would ask that you choose one you haven't already memorized. And I think you'll be able to memorize it in 1 week if you apply yourself a little bit each day. All right, the first one is by Belloc, Hilaire Belloc, or some people say Hillary. It's a debate, nobody really knows. In fact, I know someone who wrote a poem about this guy's name, whether you should pronounce it Hilaire or Hillary. So even he didn't know. I don't know. I always say Hilaire. He wrote actually a whole alphabet worth of poems all about animals. So he has a poem for every of 25 animals. He had no animal starting with X, so he skipped that one. And this is Y, the yak. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak. You will find it exactly the thing. It will carry and fetch. You can ride on its back or lead it about with a string. The Tartar who dwells on the plains of Tibet, a desolate region of snow, has for centuries made it a nursery pet, and surely the Tartar should know. Then tell your papa where the yak can be got, and if he is awfully rich, he will buy you the creature, or else he will not. I cannot be positive which. Isn't that charming? I actually did think about buying a yak at one point, but not to lead it about with the string. I was thinking yak dairy farm. I'm pretty glad I abandoned that as a career option, but it did come to me. All right, the next one is also about an animal, but you can see this is like 2 notches, 2 big jumps up in terms of vocabulary, comprehension, and nuance, and literacy, understanding allusions, right? Things that are reflected or represented in other writings. So here we have The Hen by Oliver Herford. Alas, my child, where is the pen that can do justice to the hen? Like royalty, she goes her way, laying foundations every day, though not for public buildings, yet for custard, cake, and omelette. Or, if too old for such a use, they have their fling at some abuse, as when to censure plays unfit upon the stage they make a hit, or at elections seal the fate of an obnoxious candidate. No wonder, child, we prize the hen, whose egg is mightier than the pen. That's a little weird. The writing isn't quite as conversational. You've heard that expression, the pen is mightier than the sword. So this is his argument that the egg is mightier even than the pen. So by logical application, eggs also trump swords. I wonder. All right, so that's the second one. And it's only 2 stanzas, but they're a little bit longer. Then we have a poem I've always loved. Anyone familiar with Melville? Herman Melville? He wrote a really long book that almost no one reads all the way through. Moby Dick, which I have heard has a section with many pages simply describing the waves on the ocean. Not only did Melville have a way with words, he just had a whole lot of them. But this is called The Maldive Shark. I've loved this poem since I was about your age. About the shark, phlegmatical one, pale sot of the Maldive Sea, the sleek little pilot fish, azure and slim, how alert in attendance can be. From his saw pit of mouth, from his charnel of maw, they have nothing of harm to dread, but liquidly glide on his ghastly flank, or before his Gorgonian head, or lurk in the port of serrated teeth, in white triple tiers of glittering gates, and there find a haven when peril's abroad, an asylum in the jaws of the fates. They are friends, and friendly they guide him to prey, yet never partake of the treat. Eyes and brains to the dotard lethargic and dull, pale ravener of horrible meat. Now, that poem, I would guess, has a few words you may have not seen before. Does anyone see a word you don't know what it means? Noah, what do you see?
Phlegmatical.
Phlegmatical. You've possibly heard phlegmatic, but could you define it? I don't know. Any other words? Yes, Levi.
Dotard?
Dotard, yes. I believe that it means lethargic and dull. You think of a dotard as someone who is not completely mentally all there. Very often someone in the last stage of life where they're kind of losing mental acuity, but not always, sometimes used in comparison there. Any other words you don't particularly know? Yes, Nevaeh.
Gorgonian?
Ah, Gorgonian. And poets sometimes capitalize random words for no reasons that you understand, and then more modern poets tend to do that less. In this case, Gorgonian is capitalized because it is an adjective derived from a proper noun, the gorgon. Anyone know what a gorgon is? Yeah, Noah?
It's a creature from Greek mythology. Medusa was a gorgon. It's got the human head with snakes for hair, and if you look on their face, you turn to stone.
If you look on the face of the Medusa, you turn to stone. This would make a great movie. So, now here's my advice for you. If you read something and you don't know what the word means, find out yourself, right? You're responsible for your own education. Get a dictionary, get a phone, look on the computer. I mean, I haven't seen a paper dictionary for a while, but they're still around. However, you can look up some of these words like phlegmatical, right? What's he talking about there? What does it say? They are friends. Who are the friends of the shark? Caleb?
Pilot fish.
Pilot fish. So there's a little fish that swim right alongside the shark, right? So this is about a symbiotic relationship. But I love the way he paints the shark in that horrible, horrible image. Okay, now, if you want something that is classic in terms of people have been memorizing this poem for a very, very long time, it's highly regarded in the canon of great modern poetry. John Masefield, Sea Fever. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. And the wheels kick, and the wind's song, and the white sails shaking, and a gray mist on the sea's face, and a gray dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying, and the flung spray and the blown spume, and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. Do you like it? We don't live by the ocean. Few of us have sailed in boats. But you can kind of tune in. His heart is still out there. My father was like that. He just loved to be on the ocean. So this was a favorite of his. Okay, so those are 4 choices. And I'd like you to kind of tentatively tell me which one you think you'd like to do, but then you have freedom to change if you need to for one reason or another. So think for a moment, the yak, the hen, the shark, or sea fever. What do you think you might like to do? Noah, which would you lean toward?
I think the Maldive shark.
The Maldive shark. I kind of thought you might go that way. Madison?
Sea fever.
Sea fever. Beautiful. Amy?
The yak.
The yak.
The yak.
The yak.
The hen.
The hen. That might be my choice if I had to do this assignment, but thankfully I don't. Maybe I should. Jack?
Sea fever.
Sea fever?
Sea fever.
Sea fever?
Sea
Emily?
fever.
Good?
Maldive shark.
Good?
Sea fever.
Sea fever. Wow, we got a lot of sea fevers here.
The yak.
The yak?
The hen.
The hen. All right. So everyone's kind of thinking, all right, I could do that. Now, let me give you the most important tip on learning anything, especially if it has many parts to it. Think of it in different parts. So these have, stanzas, right? The yak is 4 line stanzas. The hen is 7 line stanzas. The Maldive shark is 4 and then 8 and then 4 lines, and then sea fever is 4 each. So don't think you have to memorize the whole poem all at once. No more than you would go, eat a whole watermelon at once. Your mouth's just not big enough. What do? Then you stuff it. So you cut it into small pieces. So what I would recommend is don't try to memorize more than 1 stanza at a time. And you can even go back and just go to the first line. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak. And say that several times. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak. It doesn't, why commend me the yak? I don't know, but that's just the way it is. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak. You'll find it exactly the same, and that's the thing. And then you repeat just that much again and again and again until you can do it, and it's easy. How do you know if it's easy?
You don't have to think about it.
Exactly. You don't have to find it in your brain. It's already there on the tip of your mind, tip of your tongue, right? So don't look at the yak as one thing to memorize. Look at it as 3 short things to memorize. Okay? And don't go to the second stanza until the first one is super solid. The other thing that's very helpful, almost necessary, is don't memorize errors, because undoing a memorized error is much, much harder than catching it and doing it the first time. I can speak from experience on this. So every now and then, take your paper, give it to somebody, sibling, if they can read, or a mom or dad or a friend or an enemy, whoever you happen to have handy, and say, hey, could you check my poem? And then they read it and be sure you got every single word. Because it is possible to skip a word or put a different word in or reverse the order of words, and then you don't have it precisely correct. So your goal would be to memorize it precisely as best you can, and then prepare yourself to recite the poem in front of our class. Now, that's going to take more practice than just memorizing, because what you're going to want to do is attend to some of those things we listed as delivery elements. Can you remember any of those? What were we talking about?
Speech and posture.
Speech. So voice, you want to be loud enough. So if you think you have a kind of quiet little voice, practice projecting. We'll talk about all of this more later. But the best way would be to, when you recite it, pretend you're saying it to someone who's on the other side of the room. So projecting out. Doesn't always mean more volume per se. It means more reach. And there's a difference. Okay, what else?
Posture.
Posture, all right. What else?
Eye contact.
Eye contact. If you have it memorized and it's easy and you don't have to figure out what comes next, you should be free to look at every single person in the room at least once during your poem. So eye contact. Anything else?
Hand gesture.
So you might try some hand gestures. Now I would demonstrate the not good hand gestures. Okay, you don't want to do that in front of people. So there's phases. Phase 1, control your hands. Have them do nothing. That's why we have a nice little lectern, and you can hold on to it. And that keeps your hands busy. But that's just stage 1. You got to get beyond that very quickly. Stage 2 would be adding in some appropriate gestures. Now, in the beginning, if you are not comfortable with this, you may fall into a couple pitfalls. Here is a pitfall. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak. You will find it exactly the thing. It will carry and fetch. You can ride on its back or lead it about with a string. Okay, what's my problem?
Too repetitive.
Just doing the same gesture over and over.
Mm-hmm. Did you like that? It got old pretty fast, didn't it? And I have been in places and I have watched speakers who use a very, very, very narrow repertoire of one or two gestures just again and again and again and again. Get me out of here. So, be careful not to do that. The best thing would be to think, okay, what could I do with my hands when I say a particular thing? So if I'm thinking through this poem, as a friend to the children, what would be a thing I could do with my hands to show children? Yeah, there you go. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak. The yak. So I paint my invisible yak right up there. When I do that, again, you'll know I'm referring to the yak. If I do that again, you'll know I'm referring to the children. You'll find it exactly the thing. Or maybe you'll find it exactly the thing. It will carry and fetch. You could ride on its back. Or lead it about with a string. Oh, yak's over here. Or lead it about with a string. So you see, I'm trying to think, all right, how do my gestures and facial expressions, to some degree, match the words? Okay? So it's a little bit like acting. How many of you have been in a play of some sort ever? So you think about that experience of being in a play and the director saying, when you say this, do that. Right? And then you're thinking, okay, when I say that, I'll do that. So see if you can then work in some good gestures. A couple more things to be careful of. How many of you suspect you might get a little bit nervous standing right here, reciting a poem from memory to this group? Anyone feel? Okay, here's the danger. I will be nervous. You ready? The Yak by Hilaire Belloc. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak. You will find it exactly the thing. It will carry and fetch. You can ride on its back and lead it about with a string. The Tartar dwells on the plains is about... Okay, what's my problem?
Your pace.
Going a million miles a minute, right? It's very common that people in public speaking, when they are nervous, will speed up to the point where it's hard to follow even. So you want to pace yourself. There's commas. There's ends of the line. You think about a little bit of white space around your words. All right, I would love to tell you that we're offering a $100 cash prize to anyone who actually volunteers to do this next week. I would, but I'm not going to. All right. Okay, let's organize your binders. Okay, so to recap homework, 2 things to think about. Assignment 1, make the keyword outline of the story of Thoth, practice, and then go tell it back from your keyword outline to anyone else. Secondly, you'll memorize and practice and try to think about how to present a poem with a clear, interesting voice, good body, face, gestures. Practice a little bit because we're going to then have volunteers to do that. And of course, if nobody volunteers, we just go alphabetically by middle name. No. We'll get some volunteers. And we're also going next week to start to learn some principles of listening and critiquing presentation as well. So, All right, super. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and go have a lovely day. What's left of it.